Thanks, guys. We did have a debate on the floor over some pension bills, and then I wanted to outline what our procedures are going to be on our budget for the rest of the year. So I can repeat those comments and then take your questions, and then comment on Senator Radogno's response. So we have two steps to the budget process. The first one was to certify through a resolution how much money we have to spend. We did that by passing a resolution. We took COGFA's numbers, which is a bipartisan commission, and that's the beginning part of the appropriation process. That is how much money we have to spend. And then today we started passing the actual budget, and we passed bills dealing with the pension payments. So we have prioritized the pension payments. We said it's not negotiable. We're not going to do what we did in the last 2 years where we borrowed the pension payments, and we're not going to take a pension holiday like Governor Christie did in New Jersey. So far, we identified the fact that we have $34.3 billion to spend, and we have appropriated. An appropriation is an authorization for the governor to spend. We don't spend, we just authorize. So we've appropriated $7.8 billion for pensions and debt service. So we have $26.5 billion left to appropriate for state government in order to have a balanced budget. So when we come back in May, we're going to spend a large portion of our time on the floor dealing with the governor's appropriations bills, so that we're going to do things differently than we have in the last number of years. And this will be a better budget process. So the appropriations committees will consider any amendments to the appropriation bills that are currently on third reading. The appropriation bills on third reading are the governor's budget, found in about 40 or so different bills, and these represent the governor's introduced budget. So this is an important point. We're not going to have an omnibus, single, up and down vote on a budget. We're going to do it the way we've always done it in the past up until recent years. And this is in response to many legislators who have objected to the fact that we've had a budget dumped on their desk the last night, not enough time to read it. So we're doing this early in the month to go through each of the governor's introduced bills. This is an amending process for each of the agency budgets. We do have limited resources. We believe that the governor's budget is not balanced. He's suggested that we spend more money than we have. So this is going to be a difficult process for us to go through and to cut from his proposed budget. Now, I would respectfully urge our colleagues from the other side of the aisle to go to the Reference Bureau and have their proposed cuts to the budget drafted in the form of amendments to the governor's budget. They had a press conference in the Blue Room. They had a document. You guys were probably there. That's fine. That's a document that says we're going to cut $5 billion, whatever it is. Now go to the Reference Bureau, get a bill, an amendment, file it in the well, and then we'll send it to committee and we'll debate it so we can have a vote. That's the only way in which we could possibly implement their cuts, would be for them to go to the Reference Bureau and get an amendment and introduce it. So all amendments filed that may reduce any agency budget will be referred to the Appropriations Committee for consideration, and then after the committee hearings, we'll go to the floor and we'll take votes. So this is a much more transparent process. We will produce a budget that is balanced, that lives within our means, and I'm going to ask members to make preparations for the week, so that they know when we come back we're going to be working very, very hard. Now, again, Senator Radogno seemed to suggest, and I'm kind of surprised and disappointed, that she's willing to meet in the next couple of weeks to work on an agreed-upon budget, which would be, I'm certainly willing to talk to her, but that's not what I'm suggesting here. We're not suggesting going behind closed doors and having a take or to leave it plan that we dump on the desk of the members. And this is kind of an odd request, it seems to me, in light of the fact that after boycotting the budget for the last 2 years, they had a press conference where they announced these cuts, and now they're suggesting that they're not even going to go and have us vote on it. So we are going to do, in the next few weeks, go through the budget with our staff and members of our caucus, especially the appropriations chairman and the former appropriations chairman, to see where we can find cuts. We want the Republicans to participate. We will offer our amendments. We'll urge them to vote for it. If they don't think that we're cutting enough, they can introduce their own amendments, and we can take votes on cutting some more. So their press conference and their proposal is not a budget until they go to the reference bureau and they put it in the form of a bill. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
How much money do you think you'll have to cut in order to get down to the $26.5 billion you have remaining in revenue?
It appears that the governor's budget was about $1.7 billion out of whack. However, a portion of that would be attributable to lapse spending. And there is a traditional lapse spending. So that's 2 months' worth of bills that you pay in the next fiscal year. And that would be subtracted from the $1.7 billion. So somewhere around traditionally $500 to $700 million. So we need to cut, I believe, about $1.2 billion. And we've clearly started that process. We've already appropriated over $7 billion, and we have the remaining amount to spend. We could not cut pensions. We could not cut pensions if for some reason Tom Cross wants to call his bill in the House. I think it's House Bill 154, and Madigan has indicated 149. Sorry, and Madigan's indicated he'd be willing to call it. If that bill passed, it cuts current benefits. I certainly would want to help facilitate a vote on the floor in the Senate on that bill. I would not vote for it because it's clearly unconstitutional. It'll never become the law. If it was to pass and be signed by the governor, it would be result in long court battles that will cost us millions of dollars in legal fees, and we'll never get to book it. But if people want to, I'm not on the Supreme Court, so if people want to vote on it and pass it, I'm just predicting that it won't bank any savings. But if I'm wrong, and it banks some savings, that'll be something in which we will be able to then reduce the appropriation down the line.
What do you see cutting or even eliminating agencies? I don't know if that's even on the table to get to $1.2 billion.
Well, I don't know yet. That's what we're going to do. That's what the process is going to be. We have 40-some bills that we have out there that represent the governor's budget, and we're going to go through it. And we look forward to having the Republicans provide their amendments and their view of how we should cut the budget as well.
Is there any spending that's off the table, like school spending or human
Well, I don't think it's a good idea to have anything off the table. I mean, I have certain priorities myself that I feel I don't want to cut, but I think we should be open to everything. There should be no, anything that says that's a deal breaker. I mean, we have to. One thing we do know, we have to cut. We want to give the governor a balanced budget.
Does this address the backlog in Army?
Now, we can argue over the semantics, and I don't know a better way to try to describe this, but I like the analogy of saying that we've used our credit card. And I would suggest that we ask our comptroller, who I think the Republicans all trust, I certainly do, to tell us exactly how much money we have already obligated ourselves to pay to our vendors and our school districts and other folks that we owe money to. I believe it'll be somewhere around the area of $6 billion. That would be like a $6 billion credit card. And if you don't have the $6 billion to pay off your credit card, and you have a home equity line of credit, you can pay that credit card bill off with the home equity line of credit, and then pay that home equity line of credit off over a number of years at a low interest rate. That's what the governor has proposed. He proposed it at a higher level than that, so if we can lower it because we do more cutting, or if it's not as much as he thought, all the better. So we would then pay our bills, which is what everybody wants to do around here. We would have a balanced budget, and we'd have a stability in the government for at least the next 4 years, where we know we have the revenues to pay off that refinancing, and we have revenues to have a balanced budget.
Republicans say you should cut that money, though, right? I mean, they're not going to sign on to that borrowing.
And that's great. They can go to the reference bureau, draft the amendments that cut the $6 billion plus the $1.5 billion that we're short, or 1.2, and we can have votes on it.
How do you foresee resolving the different revenue estimates that the Senate and the House are using? They're about $1 billion less than you.
We'll worry about that after we pass our budget over to the House. The budget.
Worry, though.
Well, you know what? I'd like to trust COGFA. It's a bipartisan commission. I think what the House did was to take the governor's original proposed revenue estimate and then subtract out some assumptions the governor had about some revenues that are not actually in the law. So I think that the House, started out that way, and then COGFA's numbers came after that, and they just haven't updated it. So if we have to negotiate that with the House, we will. But you're right, it is $1 billion. And so the House is doing the same process over there. They're cutting the budget. If they cut more than we do, then we'll have to have a reconciliation.
And in theory, then that would mean, if their number is right, then it'd be a $2.7 billion that you have to cut. Is
Right.
that
I
correct?
just feel very comfortable that COGFA numbers it's a bipartisan commission, they're more accurate.
But
The
you would
Speaker's
foresee
kind of
resolving
supposed to
that
be saying-
after you pass a Senate budget and the House passes its budget, and then you'd have two sort of
Well-
complete budgets using different things.
Well, no, because we've already passed House bills already. We've passed over $7 billion worth of appropriations that the House has already passed.
Would that-
So there may be very well agreement on some of the bills that we pass over to them, and we might agree with some bills they pass over to us, and we will together appropriate a balanced budget.
How's the $7 billion fit into the Quinn budget? Was that straight out of the Quinn budget, or was he looking
What
at
$7 billion are you
the
referring to?
$7 billion that you passed for pensions and debt? Does that?
Yeah, that was in his budget. I think we made it we passed a few extra Senate bills that reflected a more accurate number. But yeah, in his budget he proposed that we appropriate debt service and pensions and pay for those.
And you had passed something today, $64.7 million from the Senate originally. Was there just an accidental calculation?
Yeah, we just more accurately described the amount of money that had to be put into the pension funds.
Do you see any revenue increases playing a part in this, either cigarette tax, which I know originally had been intended to perhaps go toward capital, either that or anything that the governor had proposed that is not yet law, but are you open to either of his ideas?
Well,
in that regard?
there's, for example, there is a proposal that we ask our retirees to pay more for their health insurance. So if we did that, that would come into the category of additional revenues, for example. But there's no new taxes that we're proposing.
What's the status on that retiree health care thing? I know Senator Schoenberg was
I think,
crafting that.
yeah, I think there's a report that's due. There's a consulting company that's coming back with a report to see if there's a way in which we can, based on a means test, ask some of the retirees who may have retired at early retirement years ago, gone out and got another job, their other job has health insurance that they're not taking because they work for the state. I think that we're talking about folks that have an average salary of over $70,000, plus they're getting a pension. So, and also in some cases free health care. So that's what we're talking about looking at, and that would be additional revenues and perhaps avoid some of the additional cuts.
If Republicans don't file, go to LRB, file their amendments for their package, what does that mean? Do you have any expectations for them to do so? Or would you
I
go
would
it
think
alone?
if I were you guys, I would ask them, what was your press conference about when you talked about the $5 billion worth of cuts? How are we supposed to vote on them if you don't go to the reference bureau and get a bill and introduce it? It's not like I'm bottling up their proposals. I'm inviting them to introduce them so we can vote on them. It would be amazing for them not to actually introduce their proposals. And that's all I'm inviting them to do. And then, of course, I'm asking them to help us with the cuts that we are going to propose.
just to clarify, are you saying that any proposals that they did introduce would get a floor vote or just a committee hearing?
Well, certainly a committee hearing, and certainly we could consider, if there was enough support to have a vote on the floor. That's possible.
Now, when you talk about cuts you're going to propose, I mean, when will we see like a single outline of what those cuts are and how they add up to the $1.2 billion?
Well, that's a good point. We've been accused of doing this piecemeal. Well, that's not accurate at all. We know we have to cut 1.2. I would say 1.2 is the goal. And so we will try to come up with amendments that will reach that total. It's just that it's not going to be in one bill dumped on their desk on May 30th or 31st.
But in terms of your priorities where these cuts would occur, I mean, I guess I'm still curious, when will we know what those priorities are? When will we see them?
Probably the week of May 3rd when I announce we're going to come back and work on the budget.
So that, I think Dave was saying you'll actually have the amendments for the one.
Yeah, we're going to go to the reference bureau, not the blue room, and we're going to have,
Yeah.
budget,
Both.
And I
actual bills. We're going to vote on bills.
And I get your point on the, going to the reference room. I'm guessing that their point is that they are gonna have to go that deep, they'd have to make some deep cuts that would be something that would create political backlash. And so
Look,
they want
I didn't
something
add, I praised them for having a document. I think some parts of it are unconstitutional, or they violate contracts, or they violate consent decrees, but there's certainly other things in there that are very specific. I think they proposed the cuts in education of something like $750 million. So go to the reference bureau, get their amendment to cut the education budget by $750 million, and let's debate it.
Is that something you would vote for? Cutting education by that degree?
I don't think it's necessary to go that high, but we have to really sit down and see if we can get a comprehensive approach to reach the $1.2 billion in cuts. They were specific about certain things. If they want to do it, introduce them.
Well, why are they bluffing? Why aren't they drawing up a bill?
I'm telling you, I was surprised today to hear that this is their plan. I have offered this in a more transparent, open process, the way I remember it happening years ago. And some of the older reporters here, or more veteran reporters, not older reporters, would remember how we used to do it. And so it's the way it should be done.
Well, there is a middle ground between what you're proposing and dumping something on everybody's desk at the last minute that's a done deal, and that would be for the governor and the leaders to kind of set some general guidelines for, we'd like education to be in this ballpark and this and that ballpark. Why not pursue that possibility?
Well, everybody, the governor made his proposal and his budget, and it's out of whack. And so we are responding to the governor's proposal, and now we're saying to them, let's each work together. You've got your proposal, we'll work on ours, introduce your amendments in 2 weeks, and then we'll go through this open debate about it. And so that will get us to a balanced budget.
Do you think, Mr. President, that if you get this through this way, that you'll be able to prevent a tax increase or keeping the taxes at the same level? Will you think it will expire is what I'm trying to say?
Well, that's 4 years from now, and we have no idea what the economy is going to be like. We have no idea what the changes that might take place at the federal level. There's a whole bunch of speculation. We have proposed and have assured the next 4 years a stable, balanced budget with a way to pay all our bills off that had accumulated over the last number of years. And that's what we're proposing. And that decision, as I've said before, when we passed the income tax, is a smart one, because we'll have a governor's debate about whether we should increase it, let it go away, decrease it. Even the Republicans' press conference proposal suggested that they wanted to phase it out. They couldn't even eliminate it under their own proposals. So it's a tacit acknowledgement that there was a need for more revenues.
Do you see a scenario where this approach you're talking about could take us beyond the May 31st deadline? And is there any advantage to you? Because if you go past that deadline, you're obviously going to be, the Republicans
We're inviting them to be at the table right now.
It's kind of shared sacrifice in the sense that they'd have to actually be on.
We're proposing,
Voting.
we want to cut the governor's budget. We're asking, and they proposed that they want to cut the governor's budget, so we should have some commonality here. Let's go on the floor and vote to pass the cuts.
Senator Rodonio has said that the concept of keeping contracts closed is a bad one, that you gotta, take the unions to the nets. Should that play any role?
You know what?
Should ask
My
them
only
to
point
open
is that it's not within the purview of the General Assembly. She's proposed opening contracts, going back to court, and opening up consent decrees, fine. But we don't do that. It's the governor's office that would have to do that. So, and the constitutionality issue, that's up to the courts, and that's why I would say I wouldn't block a vote on bills that I think are unconstitutional. I'm just not going to vote for them.
Should the governor seek to open negotiations and union
Well,
contracts?
I think he did already try to do that, and he's welcome to do it again.
If the Republicans won't play ball in terms of the Democrats' proposed cuts, do you think you can get those through the Senate with all Democratic votes?
I have no idea. It's going to be very difficult.
So you might need their votes then to even get the cuts that you guys.
Well, I can't imagine that they would want to vote against cuts when they've already proposed so many themselves.
They voted against funding the pensions today, though, so, I mean, some of them did.
Some of them did, but most of them did not.
Procedurally, when you come back and deal with these separate budget bills, what happens if, through amendments here and there, together they add up to more money than you have available?
Well, that would be over appropriating, and we're trying to avoid that.
Right,
And that's
but
what, and that's why we then have to deal with the House, and we have to work with the House on, negotiate with them, apparently even on revenue estimates, as well as what the cuts are.
Should Quinn be part of these negotiations?
Well, the governor obviously is going to be necessary to sign these bills. He's more than welcome to, and we've been meeting with the Bureau of the Budget to talk about where there could be cuts. That's why when he first introduced the budget, we had to take some time to see exactly if it was balanced or not. And it took us some time to do that, and we have determined that it's not.
Do you consider the governor's other ideas, for instance, school consolidation, closing regional offices of education, are those basically dead?
Well, let's just focus on the budget today, because
Do you
this
have
is what.
maybe one or two more questions, Ed?
So.
The speaker has said that he could, or that he and the Senate, or the House Republicans and combined with the Senate Republicans could outvote you in a conference committee on the revenue estimate. I mean, how do you see that?
We don't have to necessarily even talk about conference committees. We're passing Senate bills to the House bills to the Senate. We can add amendments and have people decide to concur with amendments. We have extremely cooperative relationships between the House and the Senate on everything, and that's going to continue on the budget.
So does that mean then you could just refuse, or you're not looking to go down that route? I mean, you
We have to pass a budget. We have to. If we don't authorize the governor to spend any money, the government would shut down. So we're not going to do that. We're going to pass authorization just like we did today. We're 20% of the way there.
Right, but you could just block a conference committee from happening.
Well, both this House and the Senate could block conference committees.
Right.
We're going to have to pass a budget, and this is just a normal process of passing legislation.
So his threat is not really any good.
I had never heard the speaker threaten.
Okay, guys, we need to wrap
Thanks.
it up. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.